An immigrant donated blood to help a sick child, later learning they were the prince of their homeland. The words danced across Alara's mind like a distant melody from home as she sat in the sterile waiting room of St. Mary's Hospital, her worn sweater pulled tight against the aggressive air conditioning. 6 years in America, and still her body remembered the warmth of Narovia, a country now existing only in fading photographs and fractured memories. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everyone in the same sickly pallor. Alara's fingers trembled slightly as she filled out the donor form. Her penmanship, once praised by her father as worthy of royal documents, now hurried and uncertain. The irony wasn't lost on her. Back home, she had been a respected pediatric nurse at Narovia's finest hospital. Here, she cleaned office buildings at night and took community college classes during the day, her medical credentials buried beneath immigration paperwork and institutional barriers. First time donating? The volunteer's voice was kind, motherly in a way that made Alara's chest tighten with an unexpected ache. No. Alara's accent still clung to her words, despite years of practice. In my country, I was nurse. I donated many times. The woman's smile didn't falter, but Alara caught the subtle shift in her eyes, that familiar recalibration people made when they realized she wasn't from here. Well, we're grateful to have you today. There's a critical need for your blood type. Alara nodded, following the volunteer down a hallway lined with posters of smiling children and grateful patients. She hadn't planned to donate today. The flyer had caught her eye as she'd rushed to her English class, a special blood drive for pediatric patients. Something about the child's eyes in the photograph had stopped her mid-stride, a familiarity she couldn't place. The donation chair was uncomfortable, but Alara had known worse discomforts. As the needle slipped beneath her skin, she closed her eyes and remembered the chaos of her departure from Narovia, the midnight escape, the whispered goodbyes, the weight of her mother's ring pressed into her palm. The revolution had come swiftly, violently. The royal family had fallen first, then anyone associated with the former government. As a nurse who had once treated the royal children, Alara had barely escaped with her life. All done, the technician announced, placing a bandage over the small puncture. You did great. Alara smiled faintly. The blood, it goes to children? Yes, primarily. There's a particular case, actually. The technician hesitated. There's a young boy who needs regular transfusions. Rare blood type like yours. Been in the hospital for months. Something flickered in Alara's chest. Not quite recognition, but a pull nonetheless. He is very sick? Improving, but it's been a long road. As Alara gathered her things, a commotion erupted at the end of the hall. Raised voices, the squeak of hurried shoes on linoleum. She caught fragments of urgent conversation. The boy's numbers are dropping, and need type AB negative immediately. The technician who had taken her blood rushed past, then paused, turning back. Your donation might be going to good use sooner than we thought. Alara hadn't intended to return to the hospital. One donation, one small act of giving back to a country that had, if not embraced her, at least sheltered her. Yet 3 days later, she found herself walking through the automatic doors again, clutching a small stuffed lion, a humble gift purchased with money she could barely spare. I donated blood, she explained hesitantly to the pediatric ward receptionist. They said there was boy, very sick, who received it. I thought perhaps, the receptionist's expression softened, that would be in room 412. Technically only family is allowed, but she glanced around and lowered her voice. Doctor, Abernathy is doing rounds now. He might make an exception if you explain. The pediatric ward was painted in cheerful colors that couldn't quite mask the underlying medical gravity. Alara felt her nurse's instincts awaken as she noted monitor readings and IV placements in passing rooms. She found Dr. Abernathy, distinguished by his salt and pepper beard and kind eyes, reviewing a chart outside room 412. Excuse me, she began, her rehearsed speech suddenly inadequate. I donated blood 3 days ago. I was told it might have gone to the boy in this room. The doctor studied her face. Are you the AB negative donor? The timing of your donation was providential. The word hung between them, freighted with meaning. Alara clutched the stuffed lion tighter. I was nurse in my country. I know what it means to receive blood at critical moment. I only wish to, she faltered, unsure how to express the compulsion that had brought her back. Dr. Abernathy's eyes crinkled with understanding. He's awake now. 10 minutes, no more? He's been through a lot? The room was dim, curtains drawn against the harsh afternoon sun. Machines beeped softly, monitoring vital signs with electronic vigilance. And there, small against the white hospital sheets, lay a boy of perhaps 7 or 8 years. His skin was pale, his dark hair a stark contrast against the pillow. Something about the shape of his face, the set of his jaw even in illness, stirred a distant memory in Alara. The boy's eyes, deep brown with flecks of amber, opened as she approached. They widened slightly, moving from her face to the stuffed lion in her hands. "Hello," Alara said softly in English, then, without thinking, added a traditional Narovian greeting, "Swenta Valia." The boy's reaction was immediate, a sharp intake of breath, tears suddenly welling. He responded in perfect native Narovian, "You're from home." The words pierced Alara's carefully constructed American persona. She hadn't heard her mother tongue spoken so purely in years. "Yes," she answered in Narovian, moving closer. "I brought you this." She placed the lion beside him. His small fingers touched the mane. "Thank you. The doctor said someone special gave blood for me. Was it you?" "Yes. I'm Alara." The boy studied her with an intensity that seemed beyond his years. "I'm Theo," he said after a moment, using a diminutive that tickled something in Alara's memory. "Are you an angel?" The question startled a laugh from her. "No, just a nurse. Or I was back home." "Where is home now?" "A small apartment, 20 minutes from here by bus." Theo shook his head. "No, I mean in Narovia. Where was home?" The innocent question landed like a stone in still water, rippling through her carefully compartmentalized memories. "The capital," she answered carefully. "I worked at Central Hospital." Something flickered across the boy's face. Recognition, perhaps, or the shadow of it. Before either could speak again, the door opened and Dr. Abernathy appeared with a woman whose expensive clothing and perfect posture screamed of authority. "Time's up, I'm afraid," the doctor said gently. The woman, clearly not medical staff, assessed Alara with cool precision. "Who is this?" Her accent was American, but something in her bearing reminded Alara of the diplomatic corps that had once frequented the Royal Hospital. "Blood donor." "Doctor," Abernathy explained. "Just a brief visit." Alara nodded respectfully to them both, then turned back to Theo. "Farewell, little lion," she said in Narovian, the childhood endearment coming unexpectedly to her lips. The boy's eyes widened again, his mouth forming a perfect O of surprise. As Alara turned to leave, she heard him whisper something that sounded like, "She knows." But the closing door cut off any response from the woman. In the hallway, Alara leaned against the wall, her heart pounding with an emotion she couldn't name. There had been something so familiar about the boy, something that pulled at threads of memory she had deliberately packed away. The way his eyebrows arched when surprised, the particular cadence of his Narovian, it reminded her of number. She stopped the thought before it could fully form. Coincidence, nothing more. The royal children had all perished in the revolution. Everyone knew that. Yet, as she rode the bus back to her apartment, the boy's face remained vivid in her mind. Theo. Not a common Narovian name, but not unheard of either. It could be short for Theodore, or Theophilus, or Theovere. The name of the youngest prince, barely 3 years old when the revolution came. Alara's hands grew cold despite the warmth of the bus. Impossible. The royal family had been killed, all of them. The announcement had been broadcast worldwide. She had mourned them, along with her homeland. But doubt, once planted, grew quickly in the fertile soil of her memories. She had treated the young prince once for a case of childhood measles. His eyes had been the same remarkable brown with amber flecks. And Little Lion, it had been Queen Marissa's pet name for her youngest son, for his courage during medical treatments. By the time Alara reached her apartment, her mind was racing. Could the American government have secretly rescued the young prince? It would explain the security, the private room, the woman who carried herself like a diplomat. Sleep eluded her that night, memories surging like waves against a crumbling seawall. The royal nursery with its painted ceiling of stars. Queen Marissa's kind smile as she thanked the medical staff. The chaos of the revolution's first night, smoke rising from the palace, rumors spreading like wildfire through the hospital halls. Alara had never meant to become an exile. She'd planned to weather the political storm, to continue her work regardless of who held power. But when the revolutionary forces had come to the hospital, demanding the names of staff who had treated the royal family, the choice had become brutally simple: flee or die. Morning found her exhausted but resolved. She would not return to the hospital. She would not pursue this dangerous path of recognition and remembrance. She had built a life here, modest but secure. Stirring up the past could only lead to pain. Yet 3 days later, she found herself once again walking through the hospital's automatic doors, drawn by a force she couldn't explain and didn't try to resist. This time, the pediatric ward receptionist recognized her. "Room 412 again? Doctor, Abernathy left a note that you're approved for short visits." Ilara nodded, grateful and apprehensive in equal measure. As she approached the now familiar door, she heard voices inside, Theo and the well-dressed woman, speaking in rapid Nerovian. "But she knew the name Vera," the boy was saying, his voice stronger than before. "She called me Little Lion. Only Mother used that name. Many Nerovians use that endearment." The woman, Vera, responded, though her tone lacked conviction. "It proves nothing. She worked at Central Hospital. She has the right accent from the capital region. And her eyes—" "Theo, enough. We've discussed this. The fewer connections to the past, the safer you remain." Ilara should have walked away then. Should have turned and fled the hospital, the neighborhood, perhaps even the city. Instead, she knocked softly on the partially open door. The conversation ceased immediately. After a moment, Vera called, "Come in!" Theo's face brightened visibly when he saw her, sitting up straighter against his pillows. The stuffed lion remained tucked by his side. Vera's expression, by contrast, was guarded, one hand instinctively moving closer to the boy in a protective gesture. "I brought book," Ilara said in English, holding up a children's story she had found in a used bookstore, a Nerovian folktale translated into simple English. "For practice reading." Theo's smile widened. "Vera, this is Miss Ilara. She gave me her blood." The woman's posture remained rigid. "How generous of you to visit again." Ilara moved to the boy's bedside, hyper-aware of Vera's watchful gaze. "You look better today?" she told Theo in Nerovian, then caught herself and switched to English. "Color is good." "You can speak Nerovian," Theo said eagerly. "Vera and I always do when we're alone." "Theo," Vera cautioned. But the boy continued, words tumbling out in their shared native language. "Miss Ilara was a nurse at Central Hospital. Maybe she knew Mother and Father." Ilara's breath caught. She looked directly at Vera, reading the fear and warning in the woman's eyes. "I treated many children," she said carefully in Nerovian, "from all backgrounds." "But the royal children?" Theo pressed. "Did you ever meet them?" The room seemed to grow smaller, the air thinner. Ilara felt caught in a current pulling her toward a dangerous shore. "Once or twice," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Routine matters." Vera stood abruptly. "I think that's enough for today. Theo needs his rest." "No!" the boy protested. "Please, Vera. Just a few more minutes." The woman hesitated, conflict visible in the tight line of her mouth. Finally, she sighed. 5 minutes. I'll be right outside the door." When Vera had gone, Theo leaned forward, his eyes intense. "You recognize me, didn't you? That's why you called me Little Lion." Ilara's hands trembled slightly as she set the book on his bedside table. "You remind me of someone I once knew," she said carefully. "But that was long ago. I was 3 when we left. I don't remember much, just feelings, smells, a few faces." His small fingers twisted the bedsheet. "Vera says I must never tell anyone who I really am." "She's right," Ilara said softly. "If you are who I think, there are still those who would wish you harm." The boy nodded solemnly. "I know. Father and Mother and my sisters died so I could escape. Vera tells me that story every year on my birthday." His voice dropped even lower. "She says I must live for all of them now." Something cracked inside Ilara's chest, a fissure in the careful wall she had built around her past. The queen, the king, the 2 young princesses, all gone in one terrible night. And yet here sat their legacy, small and vulnerable but undeniably alive. "You had measles once," she said suddenly, the words emerging unbidden. "You were 4. Your mother stayed by your bed for 3 days without sleeping. She called you Little Lion because you were so brave about the itching." Theo's eyes widened, filling with tears. "You were there? I was one of your nurses. Not the main one, but I helped." Ilara swallowed hard. "You liked apple juice, not orange. And you had a stuffed bear named Commander." A tear slipped down the boy's cheek. "I still have him. Vera keeps him locked away so he doesn't get lost." The door opened and Vera returned, expression tight with concern. "Time's up." Ilara stood, suddenly aware she had crossed a line from which there was no retreat. She had confirmed what she had only suspected. This boy was indeed Prince Theover of Nerovia, sole survivor of the royal family, hidden in plain sight in an American hospital. Thank you for the book, Theo said in English, his small face composed once more, but his eyes held a new light. Recognition, connection, a shared secret. You're welcome, Ilara replied, her own composure hanging by a thread. I hope you feel better soon. In the corridor, Vera caught her arm, fingers digging in with surprising strength. A word, please. She led Ilara to a small consultation room and closed the door firmly. For a long moment, the two women simply regarded each other, representatives of a country that existed now only in memory and exile. You know who he is? Vera said finally, not a question. Yes, Ilara admitted. I suspected when I first saw him. Today confirmed it. And now? The question hung between them, heavy with implication. What would Ilara do with this knowledge? Who might she tell? I left everything behind, Ilara said slowly. My home, my career, my family. I built a new life here from nothing. She met Vera's gaze directly. I would never endanger him, never. Vera's posture remained tense. Pretty words. But the current regime offers substantial rewards for information about any surviving royals. I don't want their blood money. The vehemence in Ilara's voice surprised even her. I treated him as a baby. I swore an oath to do no harm. Something in Vera's eyes shifted. Not quite trust, but perhaps its precursor. He needs more than blood donations and children's books. He needs his people, his culture. She exhaled slowly. There are so few of us left who remember. How did he survive? Ilara asked, the question that had burned in her mind since recognition had dawned. An American diplomatic aide. He smuggled Theo out in a diplomatic pouch, literally a large mailbag, during the initial chaos. Vera's lips quirked in a humorless smile. I was his nanny. We were separated during the escape. I found them 2 years later through channels I won't describe. And his illness? Genetic. The same condition that affected his great-grandfather. The revolution interrupted his treatment protocol. Vera's clinical tone didn't quite mask her devotion to her charge. We've been at this hospital for 3 months. Before that, we moved constantly. Ilara absorbed this information slowly, piecing together the hardships of the young prince's hidden life. Why tell me this? Because he trusts you. Vera's voice held a note of resignation. And because we need help. His condition is stabilizing, but he misses home, or the idea of it. Most of our Narovian community contacts were compromised last year. The implication hung unspoken. Would Ilara become part of this exiled prince's makeshift court? Would she risk her carefully constructed security to help preserve a royal lineage that officially no longer existed? I clean office buildings at night, she said finally. I'm studying to recertify as a nurse, but it may take years. I have little to offer. You have his language, his culture. You have memories of the world he lost. Vera's expression softened fractionally. Consider it. That's all I ask. 2 days later, Ilara returned with another book and a small jar of honey harvested from a Narovian immigrant's backyard beehives, a taste of home she could ill afford but couldn't resist purchasing. She found Theo sitting up in bed, color improved, working on what appeared to be a school lesson. Miss Ilara! His face brightened instantly. Hello, little prince, she said softly in Narovian, glancing around to ensure they were alone. His smile faltered slightly. Vera says I'm not a prince anymore. Just a boy. Vera is both right and wrong. Ilara sat beside him. You will always be who you were born to be. But now you must also become someone new. The profound wisdom in his young eyes nearly undid her. Like you did. Yes, she acknowledged. Like I did. She presented the honey, and his expression transformed, childlike delight breaking through the preternatural maturity. Real Narovian honey. Vera tries to find it, but it's never quite right. This comes from Narovian bees, Ilara explained. A beekeeper from our homeland brought a queen when he immigrated. The honey tastes the same because the bees remember. Theo considered this with surprising gravity. Even though they're in a new place? Even then, some memories are carried in the blood. As spring warmed into summer, Ilara's visits to room 412 became a fixed point in her shifting life. She continued her night job and her studies, but 3 evenings a week, she sat beside the young prince's bed, reading Narovian stories, teaching him traditional songs, answering his endless questions about the homeland he barely remembered. Vera remained cautious but gradually allowed Ilara greater access to Theo's life. She learned the complex security protocols, never taking the same route to the hospital twice in a row, varying her visiting times, using only her first name with hospital staff. Why does he need blood transfusions? Ilara asked one evening as Theo slept, exhausted from a new treatment. Fanconi anemia, Vera explained. A rare form. It's why the revolutionaries might have let him die even if they'd captured him alive. They considered the royal bloodline weak. But he's responding to treatment? Yes. This hospital has an excellent hematology department. It's why we risked staying in one place so long. Vera's fingers smoothed an invisible wrinkle from Theo's blanket. Dr. Abernathy believes he may soon be stable enough for discharge. The news should have brought only joy, but Alara felt an unexpected pang. You'll leave then. We must. We've remained here too long already. Where will you go? Vera's smile was tired but genuine. If I told you that, I'd have to add you to our security detail. At Alara's crestfallen expression, she added, He's grown attached to you. We'll find a way to maintain contact, safely. Theo's recovery accelerated through July. His blood counts improved, his energy returned, and the specter of critical illness receded. Alara brought him small treasures, a map of Nerovia hidden inside a book about world geography, a recording of traditional music disguised as language lessons, a tiny vial of sand from a Nerovian beach, smuggled in by another exile. On a humid August evening, she arrived to find his room in disarray, drawers emptied, personal items packed. Theo sat on the edge of his bed, dressed in regular clothes for the first time since she'd met him. We're leaving tomorrow, he announced, his expression a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Doctor? Abernathy signed my discharge papers. Alara's heart constricted. Despite Vera's assurances, she feared this might be a final goodbye. That's wonderful news, she managed, setting down the small cake she'd brought to celebrate his latest good test results. Vera said I could ask you something important. Theo's hands twisted in his lap. But you can say no. Alara sat beside him. What is it, little lion? Would you come with us? The words tumbled out in a rush. Not forever, just to help me settle in the new place. Vera says I need a nurse who knows my history, and you're almost recertified and… He broke off, suddenly uncertain. It would only be for a few weeks. The request left her momentarily speechless. Leave her apartment, her job, her careful routine? Yet even as practical concerns arose, Alara knew her decision was already made. This child, this prince of her homeland, had awakened something she had thought long dead, a sense of purpose beyond mere survival. I would be honored, she said softly. If Vera is certain it's safe, I've made arrangements, Vera said from the doorway where she had been listening. Your apartment will be maintained. Your night job believes you're caring for an ill relative. Your school credits will not be affected by a temporary leave. Alara raised an eyebrow. You were confident of my answer. I was hopeful, Vera corrected. Theo needs consistency during this transition. And She hesitated, then finished softly. I could use the help. The admission, so at odds with Vera's usual self-sufficient demeanor, touched Alara deeply. When do we leave? 5 a.m. Bring only what you can carry in one small bag. We'll provide everything else. The next morning, in the gray pre-dawn light, a nondescript sedan with diplomatic plates collected them from a service entrance. Theo, drowsy but excited, sat between Alara and Vera in the back seat, his precious commander bear finally freed from storage and clutched tightly against his chest. As the city gave way to suburbs and then to open countryside, Alara watched Theo's eyelids grow heavy, his head eventually coming to rest against her arm. Across his sleeping form, she met Vera's watchful gaze. Thank you, the woman said quietly, for the blood donation that saved his life. And for what you're doing now? He is Nerovia's future, Alara replied simply. And mine as well, it seems. Vera's expression softened into something almost like friendship. Do you know the old Nerovian proverb? The king's blood flows through his people, and the people's blood sustains the king. Alara nodded, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of promise. I never imagined how literally that would prove true. After 5 hours of driving, they arrived at a secluded estate in the countryside, a sprawling main house surrounded by carefully tended gardens and a discreet but evident security presence. As they approached, Alara noticed that many of the flowers were Nerovian varieties, carefully cultivated in this foreign soil. Welcome to Little Nerovia, Vera said as the gates swung open. One of several safe houses maintained for our nation's future. Theo had awakened as they turned onto the property, his eyes wide with recognition. We've been here before! When you were 5? Vera confirmed. "You might not remember much." But as they entered the main house, it became clear that Theo remembered more than expected. He ran from room to room, exclaiming over familiar furnishings and artwork, pieces of his heritage preserved by loyal expatriates. "Look, Miss Alara," he called, pointing to a large painting in the main hall. "That's my family." The royal portrait had been painted just months before the revolution, King Andrev and Queen Marissa seated, Princess Sophia and Princess Lilibet standing behind them, and a 3-year-old Prince Theover perched on his mother's lap, all of them dressed in the formal blue and silver of the Nerovian monarchy, all of them lost except for the small boy now bouncing with excitement beneath their painted gazes. "You look just like your father," Alara said softly, noting the same determined jaw, the same intelligent eyes. "Everyone says that." Theo's voice held a mixture of pride and sorrow. "I don't remember him very well, just his laugh and how tall he seemed." Over the following days, Alara discovered that Little Nerovia housed not just Theo and Vera, but a small community of Nerovian loyalists, former diplomatic staff, distant royal relatives, and skilled professionals who had managed to escape the revolution, all of them dedicated to preserving their culture and protecting their young prince. Among them was Dr. Marku, a Nerovian hematologist who had once consulted on the royal family's medical care. He reviewed Theo's records with Alara, explaining the treatment protocol they would continue. "His condition is hereditary but manageable," the doctor explained. "With proper care, he can live a normal lifespan and will eventually be well enough to return," added Counselor Dmitri, a gray-haired man who had once been the king's closest advisor. "Return?" Alara asked, confused. The counselor exchanged glances with Vera. "To Nerovia, when the time is right." The revelation stunned her. "The revolutionary government still holds power. For now," Dmitri acknowledged. "But regimes built on bloodshed rarely endure. We prepare for the day when restoration becomes possible. That day may be years or decades away," Vera cautioned. "Our priority is raising Theo to be ready when, if it comes." Alara's 2-week stay stretched into a month, then 2. September arrived with cooling breezes and the realization that she had found a new purpose. When Vera formally offered her a position as Theo's medical caretaker and cultural tutor, Alara accepted without hesitation. "We can't offer much in terms of salary," Vera warned. "I don't need much," Alara replied. "Just enough for a small savings and occasional visits to the city." Her apartment was sublet, her few possessions moved to a comfortable room in the east wing of the estate. She sent carefully worded messages to her few American friends, explaining a sudden opportunity to work as a private nurse. None questioned her decision. In the immigrant community, unexpected life changes were commonplace. Autumn painted the countryside in fiery hues as Theo's strength continued to return. His medical treatments became less frequent, his energy boundless. Alara established a daily routine that included both essential education, mathematics, science, literature, and lessons in Nerovian history, language, and traditions. "Will I ever see it?" he asked one crisp October afternoon as they studied a detailed map of Nerovia's capital city. For real, not just in pictures. Alara traced the outline of Central Square, where the royal palace had once stood. "I believe you will. Things change, governments fall, but our palace is gone." Vera showed me the news pictures. His small face grew solemn. "They tore it down and built their headquarters there. Buildings can be rebuilt," Alara said gently. "What matters is that Nerovia lives on in its people, here and in other places around the world, and even in those still at home, keeping their heads down and waiting." "Waiting for me?" The question held a child's innocence but a monarch's awareness of destiny. "Waiting for change," Alara corrected, "which might include you someday." As winter descended, transforming the estate into a snow-covered haven, Alara found herself increasingly included in discussions about Theo's future. The exiled council treated her with respect that went beyond her role as the prince's caretaker, respect earned by the blood she had unknowingly donated to save their future king. "You're the embodiment of the old proverb," Counselor Dmitri told her during the Nerovian midwinter celebration. "The king's blood flows through his people, and the people's blood sustains the king. Your blood literally flows in his veins now." The thought humbled and amazed her. This child, who might someday reclaim his throne, carried a part of her within him, a simple nurse who had fled with nothing but the clothes on her back. On the anniversary of her blood donation, Theo presented her with a small gift, a silver pin bearing the royal lion crest, miniature but exquisitely detailed. "It was my mother's," he explained. "Vera kept it safe for me. I want you to have it." "Theo, I can't accept this," Alara protested. "It's a royal heirloom." The boy, growing taller and stronger each day, fixed her with a surprisingly regal gaze. "You gave me your blood. You left your life to help me. You're the reason I'm alive to even remember my mother." He closed her fingers around the pin. In the old days, when someone saved a royal's life, they became blood-bonded to the crown. "This makes it official." From the doorway, Vera nodded her approval, her eyes suspiciously bright. That night, as snow fell softly outside her window, Alara held the silver pin to her heart and wept, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming realization that her impulsive act of kindness had changed not just one life, but potentially the future of an entire nation. 6 years later, on Theo's 14th birthday, news arrived from Nerovia. The revolutionary government had fallen, toppled by internal corruption and popular uprising. The country was in chaos, temporary officials struggling to establish order. "It's time to begin preparations," Councillor Dmitri announced to the assembled household. "Not for immediate return, the situation is too volatile, but for Theo to emerge from complete anonymity. To begin establishing connections with sympathetic factions." Theo, no longer a sickly child but a thoughtful teenager with his father's bearing and his mother's compassionate eyes, received this news with remarkable composure. Years of preparation had done their work. He understood both the opportunity and the danger. "Will you come with me?" he asked Alara that evening as they sat in the library, the question an echo from years before. "When it's time to go back?" Alara touched the silver lion pin she wore daily above her heart. "If you wish it, my prince." "I do wish it." His voice had begun to deepen. Hints of the man he would become evident in his serious expression. "After all, your blood flows in my veins. We are bonded." "Yes," she agreed, remembering the sterile hospital room where their paths had first crossed. By chance, by choice, and by blood. Outside, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, the same stars that shone over Nerovia, a homeland neither of them had seen in many years. One day they would return together, the prince who had survived against impossible odds, and the nurse whose simple act of kindness had preserved a nation's hope. An immigrant had donated blood to help a sick child, not knowing he was the prince of their homeland. And in that single act of human compassion, the future of a country had been secured, and two displaced souls had found their purpose, bound together by blood freely given, a gift beyond measure.